Everyone for being here and joining us for our Internship Symposium. We are being joined by our featured special guests, Laura Pappani of Doris Foley Historical Library, Emily Wittenberg of the American Film Institute, and Sydney Wessinger of the Historic New Orleans Collection. So thank you, panelists, for participating, and thank you, guests, for being here for the symposium. So we are going to start off with Sydney Wessinger.
Good evening, everybody. It's such a privilege to be here. It's great to see that so many people have an interest in internships in archives and public history. Just to start, I want to go into a little bit of my background and how I ended up at the Historic New Orleans Collection. I am originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. Of course, a city robust in history and culture. I grew up in walking vicinity of several large museums, but really struggled with the sense of welcoming and accessibility when it came to museums, archives, and really just the field of public history. I had a passion for history and I chose to study that in college. I went to Xavier University of Louisiana. I'm a Catholic HBCU with a very large history department and archival collection. I had no idea that there was such a large collection only a couple of blocks away from where I grew up. And through a lot of coaching and through a lot of support from the staff, I really dove into the world of history, archives, and collections management. There was so much opportunity in the city, and it was not advocated as well as it could have been. And I think that had a lot to do with why I felt kind of this enclosed sense, like this marginalized feeling that there was just no simple way to access resources to be trained in this profession. Eventually, I needed an internship. I felt that was the way, to learn more about archives and collections. I knocked on several doors of local museums just asking, is there opportunity? Is there room to participate? And usually the answer was no. And it took a lot of nays. It took a lot of call us backs for me to actually find a place where I can immerse myself within this profession. Eventually, I did graduate. I went on to earn two master's degrees and I started my career as a curator. I actually left Louisiana for a while, which was very difficult for me. And I was called back by the Historic New Orleans Collection, who said that we notice the same urgency to where there aren't that many public history archives collections professionals. It's a dying breed, but why is that? And that's because we're not creating avenues where people can actualize themselves within careers within this field. And it's extremely unfortunate. I knew I had a passion for history, but I didn't know how to set my foot to begin the path to to actually achieve that. And internships, fellowship positions, shadowship positions, we have to treat that as student engagement. We have to treat that as fostering the next generation of public history professionals. And we have to attach learning objectives. We have to attach engagement standards. And we have to look at internships really as innovation towards the field of library science, towards the field of museums. So at the Historic New Orleans Collection, a job was literally tailored from the ground up to solve a very large problem that we had in our city. We have major universities here, not only Xavier University, but Tulane University, Loyola University, Dillard University, Louisiana State University. How do we take these students who obviously have a passion for history and a passion for cultural preservation, and how do we show them that there is potential within the field of public history? Really, how do we make public history more public? How can we use this field as to be more transformative when we speak about collections professionals and how we speak about history as social justice, how we speak about archives as community engagement. The field of archival science, the field of museum science is so expansive. And oftentimes we lose that human element when we don't engage the public. And most importantly, when we don't invite students in. So from the ground up, the Historic New Orleans Collection has built and innovated a new internship program, and we've really redefined what an internship is. A lot of times when interns would come to our organization in the past, they would take on administrative roles, they would take on clerical roles, and maybe they would shadow an archivist, maybe they would shadow a cataloger. That's not what's needed in this field today, especially considering that every single year we have new technological innovations. There's new methods of collections management. There's new methods of archival science. What we needed was to create an avenue where students can learn, where students can be trained up, and where we can actually foster these professional development standards that we want to see in libraries and museums 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. We had to step back as professionals and say that eventually this new crop of students will take over this field. What do we want them to do? What do we want them to see? How do we want to transform libraries for future generations? How do we want to transform collections to future generations? And one thing that we as a kind of a think tank decided was that how do we make these records? How do we make our collection not only more accessible to the public, but how do we create a sense of belonging and ownership to our wider audience here in New Orleans? Again, I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, blocks away from the Historic New Orleans collection, and had never been to this museum that has always had free admission. Again, there was a sense of a barrier there. I know several people, in New Orleans who've never been to many of these great museums, who have never been inside any of these great collections. So just because the doors are open, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a strong sense of access. And that's what we wanted to tackle. That's what we wanted to handle. How do we get people, not only future collections professional, but our larger audience and community as a whole, to visualize, actualize, and see themselves within the history that we collect and that we curate? So as you all think about museums, and as you all think about internships in museums, internships in libraries, internships, within special collections, understand that a lot of these entities, a lot of these organizations are taking more of an active role when it comes to integrating students and integrating the community. It's literally never been a better time to be a student of history or to be a student of museum and library science. There's so much room for imagination. There's so much room for innovation, and there's so much room for change. And I know that some job searches, some internship searches would have you think that there's not a lot of opportunity or that these positions are scarce. Could not be further from the truth. There's so much opportunity there. A lot of times you do have to pick for them. But just to say that there is potential within this future, and there's also great service within the work that we do. Do I miss being a curator at times? Absolutely. I normally get that question from our interns a lot. In 2024, we actually had 26 interns that came through the Historic New Orleans collection, the highest it's ever been in our 100-plus-year history. And the first thing that they asked me is, why am I no longer a curator? Don't I miss building out exhibits? Don't I miss creating educational programming? Don't I miss being within the collection space? And my question to that is, I'm still a curator. I'm just a curator of a different sort. No, I may not be classified as a curator on paper anymore, but I see my curatorial role now as taking care of this museum now, and also to what this space is going to be again in the future. And that starts with the students. So, my advice to you all would definitely be to lean on collections professionals, most of whom are very willing and eager to take on mentorship roles and to take on leadership roles of guidance towards students. And also, something that I wish that I would have been told 10 years ago as a student of Xavier University of Louisiana is that when it comes to building yourself up, when it comes to professional development, it's about investment and it's about self investment most of all. Um, Stand up when you get these internships and give critique, give feedback, let them know this is what I want to do. This is what I would like to be involved in. This is how I want to get my hands dirty. This is the time that I want to sit back and watch and listen. I'm just as much of a student as the interns who come into the museum, as well as all the other staff members of the Historic New Orleans Collection. We build out our internship program based on what the students want. We build out and tailor our program towards the needs of our students. And we make sure that we feed off of them just as much as we're mentoring them. There's really no self serving internship, and there never really should be. Be prepared to participate not only as an intern, but also as a voice for the next student. What was your experience now? What was your experience getting this internship and fellowship position? And what are rooms not only just for improvement, but what are the avenues and what space can we take up to be better providers for these opportunities? Again, internships are innovating and they're evolving, and we need the voices of students to follow along with that and to help us as administrators within archives and public histories to build that out and tailor it towards the needs of students. So just going to leave you all with this. While we are located in the city of New Orleans, I have worked very hard for the past few years to make sure that all of our internship positions are not only compensated. Interns and fellows deserve to be compensated for their work. They do, they do a lot. But we also, through several grants and through several civic donations, have also been able to provide housing at no cost to the intern for non-local students. So if anyone on the Zoom call is in California and you are interested in interning or having a fellowship at the Historic New Orleans Collection, we try to make it as cost friendly as possible, paying via opportunity pay or paying via stipend. But again, the housing cost here in New Orleans is a lot more expensive than people tend to. And again, when you come into our doors, we want you to focus on your placement here within our collection, not how you're going to pay $2,000 a month for a temporary rental somewhere in the French Quarter. So again, I'm sure that you all have my information. Please reach out to me if there are any comments or questions or concerns, not only just about internship opportunities, but again, I position myself as a mentor. I position myself as someone, if you just need someone to speak to about your ambitions and maybe the best path to take to make sure that you can get there, me and the entire staff of the Historic New Orleans Collection are at your disposal.
Sydney,
Mhm.
thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I was so excited to hear you speak that I didn't even give your proper introduction. So let me go ahead and do that. So she did kind of give her background, but she is hailing from New Orleans. She's the internship coordinator at the Historic New Orleans Collection. She has bachelor's degrees in history, Black American studies, along with a master's in museum science. Starting out as a curator, she later moved into a leadership role in public history, motivated by the desire to create fair opportunities for those looking to enter the fields of history and collections, reevaluating internships as opportunities that promote experiential learning through investigation, exploration, and practical application. And thank you so much for being here, Sydney, and everything that you said. I value how you spoke about accessibility, integrating the community, and fostering the attitude of equity while also offering opportunity and a chance to highlight and pave the way for diversity underrepresented voices and students to see themselves within this field. It was very empowering, and your willingness to offer guidance was truly inspiring. So, a little housekeeping. For those of you who have questions for our panelists after they speak, please go ahead and give your shout outs, give your questions, everything into the chat. We are going to have space after we hear from our additional panelists to open the floor for all of your questions. And Marlene will also highlight where you can find everything that you're learning, all the links and all the info from this panel at the end of our symposium. So again, thank you, Sydney. Next up, we have Laura Pappani. Laura graduated from UCLA in 2005 with a Master of Library and Information Science degree. Since 2006, she has worked for the Nevada County Library, a very rural library system with so much character in the Sierra foothills of Northern California. Positions she has held include reference librarian, branch manager, children's librarian, and county librarian. For the past 6 years, she has managed the Doris Foley Library, a non-circulating branch of the Nevada County Library System, with a collection focusing on local history and archives. And it is such a juicy, vintage, historical place, and I am so excited to have you here. So, Laura, go ahead and take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have to say, I was a little bit tired working the whole day at the end of the day, but Sydney just gave me all kinds of energy. I'm like ready to tackle the world now. So thank you, Sydney. I'm inspired. Let me share my screen. There we go. And what are we getting? There we go. Okay. So as Rena mentioned, I am the manager for the Doris Foley Library for Historical Research. It's part of the Nevada County Library System. It's one of the 6 branches. It's a Carnegie Library, was built in 1907 and was originally the library for Nevada City until they built a new main branch. And then this building was turned into a historical branch. We help people with research and all that kind of stuff. So right now we have our collection. We collect anything to do with local history, which is strong on like the gold rush history. Nevada City was a big gold rush town. We have court records back to like 1850 or so, and then county records like births, deaths, coroner's registries, fun stuff like that. We have local newspapers, and we're the official archive for the local the largest local paper. So we have all of their issues on microfilm and subscanned back to 1865 or something. We have a collection, the Nisenan collection. The Nisenan are the local indigenous people. And so we have a very deep research collection on history and culture, mining information, and then things like local history files. We also have special collections, which are our through archival collections. And one of them I'll highlight is the Osborne Woods collection. Osborne and Woods were 2 men who came to Nevada City in 1957, where the town was just really, it was dying, and nobody was taking care of the old architecture or putting any real care into it. So they were part of kind of like a renaissance with the city in terms of renovating some of our key buildings, like the Nevada Theater and the Miners Foundry, and also they did quirky things, like they set up an American Victorian museum as well as a teddy bear museum, because they really liked teddy bears, and had a teddy bear convention for many years that had people, adults walking down the street holding their bears, sitting them in chairs in the restaurants, and it was a fun time for everybody. So they were very much a part of the renovation scene and the revitalization of the historic downtown areas. They were also graphic artists. So what you see here is one of their graphic art pieces. It's a large poster called Cathedral. I just have a few pictures to show you. This is one called San Francisco Bay. You can see Alcatraz there in the foreground. This is part of a large poster series. And this one is the Garden of Eden, but it's not called that. It's called They Came to the Garden or something like that. Sorry, I don't really know. Oh, the Lord God planted a garden in Eden. That's it. Sorry. And then this is one of the other types of things they did with it was a poster for a quilt show that was held at their American Victorian Museum. And this is the cover of a book that they wrote and illustrated. It's really phenomenal. And then they also did smaller projects like this Christmas card that they wrote that they produced for one of the local families. So our collection has all these kinds of things: posters, graphic arts. We have one box that's all about like their artistic process, but then it also has a lot of slides from their renovation projects, and there's a lot of variety to it. We do get people coming in just to see this collection. I've had people who didn't expect it. I'm thinking of one guy from San Francisco who just came in because he wanted to see the architecture, kind of saw one of the posters, asked about the collection, and then spent the next 2 hours in here just looking at all of the graphic arts, and it was pretty cool. So that kind of highlights one of the big projects that I've been working on since I started managing this branch about 5 or 6 years ago, and that is digitization and accessibility and public relations in a bit, because people, if they don't know it's here, why would you think that this collection of beautiful posters and everything was in this little Carnegie library in Gold Country, right? So I have been really working hard to digitize and scan and promote and work with other local museums and historical libraries to try to band together to let everybody know what we have and that we are here. The internship that I worked on with, well, I had an intern from San Jose State who was local, and she approached me right at the time when I actually had short-term funding for an internship. And what she did was a digitization and metadata internship with one of our other special collections, the Robert Wyckoff collection, which has a ton of photographs. Robert Wyckoff was a photographer, but he worked for the newspaper as a photographer, and so he had a lot of photographs that scanned several decades of change in Nevada City, as well as special projects and events, because he was a journalist as well. So this was like, I didn't know anything really about scanning and digitizing. I should mention that I kind of consider myself, I call myself the accidental archivist, because I am a reference librarian at heart, and then I ended up at this library, and it's really perfect for me because there is a lot of reference and research, obviously, in working in archives. I'm very enthusiastic and curious, but I don't have a lot of training in archival science. So, but just some introductory courses from way back when I got my MLIS. So at least I knew enough to know that I didn't know anything, which is helpful, because if you don't realize that, then you could really mess things up. So it was really helpful for me to work with Sharon on this internship, simply because she was there. She was with San Jose State. She was taking classes in metadata, and she was right there with all of the current learning. So she helped me and I helped her. We kind of figured out a lot of this stuff together, with help also from, I should mention, California Revealed is a program, you're probably familiar with it, through the state library. And they have been very, very helpful in answering all of my really dumb questions about TIFF files and things like that. So she helped me by scanning. She scanned like thousands of photographs during her internship, creating, and we used another software to create preservation files as well as low-res files of these images to be put on our website. We have an online digital repository that's Content Dia, which is an OCLC product. And that was all very brand new at the time that Sharon was doing this internship. So she was working on uploading files to the files that she created to that, and then adding some basic metadata. I came in later and added some of the more detailed metadata for those items that were in the online repository, which looks like this. It's still very basic right now. It's very time consuming. So I'm still in the process of adding collections and adding more photographs. We have tons basically in backlog to get up here, but the metadata does take time to do. So Sharon has also done other projects. She still volunteers for me, but at times I've been able to get grants through California Revealed and have been able to actually hire her for a period of time. So some of the other things she's done is went through the slide collection for the Osborne Woods collection. That was all their slides of picture of in progress renovations of some of the old homes and buildings in Nevada City. And she worked on the metadata for them, which involved a lot of research about the buildings, when they were built, what they were called, who had lived there over the years, and then research and developing a controlled vocabulary or refining a controlled vocabulary for the architecture that we were seeing, so that we could describe the photographs accurately. And then she's also working on our general archives, which I call it general archives. It's really all the stuff that people took in over the years and put into archival boxes and made a Excel spreadsheet about. She's been going through those and numbering them correctly and inventorying what's in there and what's significant, what has preservation needs, what is significant in needing to be digitized, and all of that kind of stuff. So for her, I think some of the benefits she had from interning here was hands-on experience and a lot of say or a lot of input into how things developed here with our digitization projects, because I was very open to what she was learning in class and open to learning myself. And she made a real contribution here. It wasn't just like a small internship where you're not quite sure what you've contributed. You can really, at a small library here, I should mention I'm the only employee, so it's really small. You can really see your impact on the organization. And also, when she first started interning here, she was kind of a general library student. I turned her to the dark side, so then she became an archivist, and that's what she focused the rest of her studies on. And so I take full credit for that. And then for me, again, I got fresh ideas, more up-to-date knowledge, without having to go search for it. And then access to resources, because when she was taking a metadata class, we came up with a question that we couldn't figure out, and she could ask her professor. And for me, that was really helpful and really valuable to me too. So symbiotic relationship. So that is the Foley Library.
Laura, thank you. I really enjoyed how you outlined the types of archival work that can be done during an internship. I also believe that having an understanding of funding resources and grants that you were naming is a huge highlight if you're going into this field. whether it be for your own projects or maybe for an organization that you're working or interning for. And the benefits you mentioned of hands-on experience is imperative to your success as an archivist. And I just from my own perspective, applaud you for your willingness to have that symbiotic relationship with your intern and giving them agency of their projects and work. I think that that's absolutely beautiful. And again, thank you for being here. For our viewers, go ahead and post your shout outs and questions into the chat, and we will open the floor to answer those as we conclude. Next up, we have Emily Wittenberg. Thank you for being here, Emily. Emily is the Associate Director, Digital Preservation and Archivist at the American Film Institute, where she is responsible for the preservation and management of the Louis B. Mayer archive holdings, including audio, video, photography, and print collections relating to AFI and the history of cinema. So exciting. Additionally, she serves as the administrator for the enterprise level digital asset management system. She holds a master's degree in library and information science from the University of California, University of California, Los Angeles. Prior to AFI, she was a digital asset manager at the Los Angeles Natural History Museum and an archivist at the Huntington Library. Oh my gosh, I just learned that as I knew it. That's one of my most favorite places. So thank you, Emily, for being here, and go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Sydney and Laura, it was so wonderful learning about each of your institutions, and I feel a road trip coming on. So I want to come visit. You've inspired me. So thank you, Rena, for that introduction. As Rena said, I manage a lot of components of the archive within the American Film Institute. AFI has been collecting and creating content for over 50 years. However, they've never had an archivist. I'm their first. I've been there for about 10 years. So when I arrived, there was a lot of foundational work that had to happen. A lot of, dates and names and all of that was misspelled. Nothing had a unique barcode. Nothing was digitized. And so there was a great opportunity to create the archive in the way that needed to be done. And so, as she said, I manage 4 different collecting areas. I manage the print collections, which are focus on papers of filmmakers or the filmmaking process, as well as oral histories and things like that about the golden age of the studio era. I also manage all of the photography. These are usually event photography for all of our special events. We do a Life Achievement Award show every year where we honor a filmmaker for their contribution to the history of film. And then we also do like our AFI Awards, which is a yearly 10 film, 10 television series show. And then we also have done our AFI 100s. This was the countdown show. And we've done about 13 of them. We do not do them any longer, but they started around 1997 and went to about the early 2000s. And these are countdown shows of like the 100 thrills or the 100 most romantic movies. And they would go from 100 to 1. And so we interviewed many people who either participated in the making of those films or just loved those films in general. So we have raw interviews. We may have featured Whoopi Goldberg talking at Wizard of Oz for a minute and a half in that time slot, but we've got 45 minutes. What else is she talking about? She's talking about a lot. And then I also manage all of our conservatory films. So we're an MFA granting film school when we support the 6 core filmmaking disciplines, cinematography, directing, producing, production design, editing, and screenwriting. And so they make 3 practice films their first year, and then they make a thesis film their second year. They've produced those on a myriad of different formats, tape formats, film formats, etc. And so we house all of those for our history as well. And then I also manage all of the digital asset management system. So I manage the physical materials, the digitization of those analog materials, as well as our born digital content. Because right now, all of our content has digital deliverables like closed captions, music files, rights information, the film itself, textless files for localization in different languages, etc. So I have to make sure that I'm constantly being a team player and a team maker, and making sure that I get all of the content from all the various departments on campus who are actively producing material. And then I load it all into our digital asset management system, which we successfully procured in 2021. And then I apply all this juicy metadata to all of that content. And in a lot of cases for our photography, we can do facial recognition. So I can run the photography through that software system, and then I am able to train the system on what a face looks like. So the first time it sees Denzel Washington, it's like, I don't know who this is. And then the more times I say, this is Denzel, at a certain point, it will say like, oh, I think this is Denzel Washington. Can you confirm? And I'm like, yes, it is. And so that's really fun because you can see people from their historic time period. We've been very lucky that we've had a lot of repeat guests or a lot of people from historic time periods. And so if I see a young Jack Lemmon, right? If I then have a photograph of him 25, 30, 40 years later, it'll be like, oh, I think that's Jack Lemmon. And it's helped me identify some people who were labeled as unknown because they weren't a famous face, right? They were a cinematographer or a production designer. And I've been able to locate them that way and put them through the system because I've already identified them when they were either younger or older. And that's been really fruitful and very fun. So I've been able to offer both hands-on in-person internships where I kind of give you I give you a lot of different options, right? So I've had interns come in and help me process print collections, and I've said, this is yours, treat it like yours. I want you to have autonomy of decision making, of understanding what is something, where does it go, how does it fit into the larger piece. We kind of work together to develop series and sub-series and things like that, but I really let them take that autonomy, process it, rehouse it, make a finding aid, all of those things so they can see it from beginning to end. And then I also will have interns help me digitize all of our our photography. So we have scanners for black and white negatives, color slides. And so I have them, I call it the magic trick, where you take something that you can't see, and then you digitize it, and all of a sudden now it's visible and now it's shareable. And we do a little bit editing to make that photograph easier to use, right? The idea is never perfection. It's just, is it usable, right? And then I also have them help me digitize tape elements as well. I have a big digitization suite. And so I can digitize anything but a film print. That always goes out of house. And so that's been really nice and really fruitful and helped us get things more accessible, and answer those burning questions of, is the thing that's in the case actually what's on the label, or is it something completely different? And yeah, I really try and center the intern in the experience. I always tell them, if you walk away thinking that, this is not for me, I hate this, get this away from me, that is just as valuable of a piece of information to learn as something that is corroborating what you already know. So that I always tell them, if you find that this isn't for you, then you can pursue a different internship and pursue a different career path within the library science, because as Sydney said, there's a lot of ways to go with it. And so I always encourage them to do that. I also encourage people to either fortify strengths that they already have identified within themselves, or something completely out of their wheelhouse that they've never done before. I will always train you. I am not a person who will, throw you to the deep end and expect you to swim. We are doing this together. There are guides, and all of that, because I think that that's so important, because if I were to expect you to come to the table with already fleshed out skills, that's a job. That's not an internship. So it's really important to make sure that I am there as a teacher and a coach and a mentor. And it's really about building your confidence and making sure that you are happy and right on that track. And so that's what I've done. When I was going through my library science program, I did 4 different internships in addition to working part-time at a library as well, because I wanted to diversify myself. And I can point to all of those different internships that helped me get either the jobs that I had previously or the job I have now. And that just really set myself up for success to be able to go through and make sure that I could be as diverse an applicant as possible and diverse an intern and diverse an employee as possible. Because what I always tell people is you never know how many hats you're going to wear, and how many expectations are going to be made of you, and where your career will take you. When I started at AFI, I was just processing print collections because that's where we started to prioritize, right? As I've been here for 10 years, I've exponentially grown that role so that I am able to have a hand in all of those different collecting areas, and then also was able to elevate those collecting areas as well, which was so important. And so I love having interns. I have on-site internships. I also have remote internships within our digital asset management system. And I can average usually 5 to 7 interns per term. I will always try and help and say yes to as many people as possible. And it's just really about fostering that engagement. And that's really what I look for in an intern is I say, I cannot teach enthusiasm, but I can harness it. So as long as you're enthusiastic, engaged, and interested in what you're doing, then we will be like kids in a candy store because there's always something to learn. So that's pretty much it. So thank you.
Emily, thank you. Oh my gosh, you highlighted so many different aspects of film archives that I wasn't even aware of. I also really valued your examples of digitization. That is a huge landscape that is being built by essentially archivists. And you quoting that learning what you don't like is also a value during an internship was such a key point. I respect your outlook on guidance and training and the expectation that um, you harness as being a mentor and a coach and a teacher, and that you're there for the interns as well as yourself, and that relationship I think is very commendable. And also the point that you made of treating your experiences as building blocks for your future, right? So your future as a many hat wearer, and looking at these experiences that you have, how they can be utilized in some way in the future, hopefully. So thank you. Okay, let's see. So that concludes the section of hearing from our wonderful presenters. So let me see about the questions. So my fellow board member at SAASC, Shannon, was documenting the questions. Shannon, were you able to, let's see how,
Yeah, it looks like there was one question so far that hasn't been answered in the chat that I'm tracking, other than the ones that are popping up as I'm speaking potentially. And
Here, I
it
need
was,
to interrupt really quickly. Previously, we've stopped the recording when it came to questions. I don't know what you would prefer to do this time.
let's go ahead and just follow suit with what you had done before, just to honor our
Okay,
viewers' privacy because we didn't get, yes, let's go ahead and
stopping it now.
conclude the recording from here. Thank you